You don't have to be in person to negotiate deals. You can get the stats of how a sports person plays through the use of AI.
Yeah. What about the human interaction, right? Because this is a question that's always arises whenever you mention legal tech and AI.
Sports personalities are now commodities. They're monetized. There's a lot of commercialization around sports on a global level. And a huge part of that has been assisted and will continue to be assisted by tech.
Welcome to Lexzur podcast. Today, we are thrilled to host Sarah Malik, a notable legal expert. She is the founder of SOL International. She has also a strong reputation in international dispute and arbitration. She was honored as the Litigator of the Year at the GCC Women in Law Awards in 2022. She is an author. She travels a lot. She is a speaker. Sarah, tell us more about yourself.
Thank you, Hussein. Firstly, a huge thank you to Lexzur for having me and hosting me here. You, your lovely team. I'm very grateful for the hospitality. As you've mentioned, I'm a lawyer. I have a law firm, SOL, which is named after myself and my children, Sarah or Malina.
Really?
I'm in the arbitration, litigation space. In terms of the work I do, tech has become a huge part of what we do. It's been like that for about 3-4 years, starting off actually with some similar podcasts in Africa. I also do fashion, sports. I write. I'm on various advisory committees internationally. I advise Dubai International Arbitration Centre. I sit on the DFC Court Users Committee. That's the boring stuff about me. As a person, I'm fun-loving, young at heart, 2 young children. I love to celebrate life. I'm a big believer in always kind of making the best of any situation. I'm huge about knowledge sharing, investing in the next generation, planting the seeds of thoughts that are important for excellence to come through the ranks. So I thoroughly enjoy teaching. I thoroughly enjoy passing on knowledge. And I think there's a duty, and it's important, the kind of more senior you become, to share that. Nobody gets poorer by giving. And podcasts like this, the stuff Lexzur do, I think just spreads so much knowledge and awareness that's needed internationally throughout the legal community and with the next generation. So again, a huge thank you for having me here, and I really look forward to all that we do together.
To kick off this podcast, how is tech changing the game of sports, from contracts, disputes, to athletes' representations?
Thank you. So generally in sports, and you will have seen in recent years, it's changed hugely. Sports personalities are now commodities. They're monetized. There's a lot of commercialization around sports on a global level. And part of that, and a huge part of that, has been assisted and will continue to be assisted by tech. So you see sports personalities, individuals who have huge social media presences, how that's managed. Yeah. In terms of digital transformation for contract management, things can be done now much easier by using AI. You don't have to be in person to negotiate deals. You can get the stats of how a sports person plays through the use of AI. Yeah. How those stats are used, whether they're correct, whether there's any manipulation, is a separate issue. But you can have kind of cloud-based management systems for contracts. You can have e-signatures, so a personality can be sitting in Madrid and sign a contract in Saudi as long as it doesn't offend the laws of the land. And everything that's happening in the kind of sports world in terms of contract management, the AI is helping accessibility. So also there are countries where you may well not be able to travel. Sports personalities or people who are up and coming in the sports world may have issues in terms of negotiating deals. The AI is helping also negotiate deals because the contract management or the documentation will pick out wording. They'll look at key performance indicators. They'll look at data. All of those are metrics that are used in the sporting world to assess ability, to assess how an individual is likely to play, or how the algorithms will show past history, how this play is likely to go ahead. So if used correctly, it can be really effective. And in terms of dispute resolution, we've seen, I think, since the pandemic generally, not only in sports law, but generally, online platforms are becoming increasingly the go-to, and people are seeing the need, and people are seeing also the attraction of not having to do things in person. Mm-hmm. It's productive. It means people don't have to kind of travel. It's good for the environment. It's sustainable, and things get done. And all kinds of protocols do need to take place for any dispute resolution in the sporting world as well that needs to be done virtually. There are other issues in terms of how AI affects maybe integrity sometimes. Sports is generally seen as a human, naturally it's a human kind of, whether it's contact, human visualization. So there's a debate to be had about using, for example, in a sports match, a virtual referee. Mm-hmm. Is that taking the place of the individual? Are we going to rely to that degree on, going back to the cameras and see exactly what the virtual assistant referee says? And there's an argument about how that may detract from what the sporting world is there to do. But athlete representation, online dispute resolution, contract management, early days, but you can see the impact already. And I think with the globalization of sports, it's just going to have more and more of an impact generally. You're going to have digital marketing and branding of athletes. Mm-hmm. It's not always have to be in person before. And I'm old enough to remember the days where everybody would get excited to see an athlete at a signing, and you'd have lots and lots of cues and, the physical presence. And now an athlete can do anything digitally, and you can have the whole world come in and look at what's going on. The digital marketing's become huge for athletes in terms of their branding. Mm. Athletes are now no longer just a player. The sponsorship and the control that's taken on the athletes of how much time they can have on-field, off-field, how many podcasts they can do, how much public appearance. All of the AI helps on that, and all of the tech, because without that, they can't do it. They can't be in 50 countries over a certain season or otherwise. Mm. So the virtual representation, the communication, the ability to also resonate with maybe jurisdictions where people aren't easily accessible or they can't travel. The AI has helped all of that in the sporting world, and I think it's just the beginning. We're going to see a lot more of that in due course.
Amazing. Sarah, given the huge impact of AI in sports law, as you have mentioned, what are the ethical considerations, and do you think that AI might cross some ethical boundaries?
I think ethical considerations in AI have always been important, regardless of the discipline. And in the sporting world, there's biometric sensors that can be taken, tracking systems, there's clothing that's worn, and it collects personal data, and it's how that personal data is used. Yeah. Do you have the consent? Are you susceptible to hacking? Are you susceptible to any kind of cyber attacks? And what do you do in those circumstances? So that's a huge consideration in terms of ethics and AI. Who regulates it? If you're relying on any kind of AI or algorithms or programs and something goes wrong, who do you sue? Is it an individual who's leaked? Is it the program? Is it the maker of the program? So these are all issues in terms of any breaches and cybersecurity risks. And then there's also ethics that are involved in fairness and integrity in competition. So if AI is being used and its performance-enhancing techniques for athletes, that becomes an issue. How does that offend any regulations or otherwise that they are subject to? Video assistance in terms of referees, instant replays. The ethics of there is, although the AI is there to assist and to ensure things are done accurately, what about the reliance on tech over human judgment? Because it's a human sport, that's why spectators come and see. So these are all considerations that are important. And I think with the general lack of regulation, some people, there's two schools of thought. There's a debate whether that's a problem, and others are saying it's not. But for the ethics side, I think it would be good to have some parameters and some boundaries in relation to, when something's in the red zone and it shouldn't cross over. And I think ultimately, especially in the sporting world, to maintain the integrity of the sports, we will need some form of regulation of the AI that determines sport.
Yeah.
Or that governs sport.
Absolutely. Sarah, let's move to arbitration and international disputes. Given your extensive expertise in these areas, do you think that athletes are having a fair representation? Do you think that arbitration and international disputes are impacted as well by legal tech and by AI?
I think it's a great question, and I think the pandemic really brought everything to the forefront. So the traditional way of doing disputes or hearing a dispute is everybody gathers in a room from all over the world at lots of costs and when everybody's available. That's all gone away. AI, and I think with the pandemic really threw it into the forefront, has allowed for disputes to take place online through platforms as we know them, whether it be Zoom, Teams, whatever it might be. There's more and more sophisticated. And it's allowed this remote participation from anywhere you are in the world. That makes life a lot easier. There's something to be said about certain disputes may well still need to be in person. I'm a strong believer in that when you need to test evidence, having something in person, you can't have AI replicate that. Many people will disagree with me. Maybe I'm old school. And there are AI ways of ensuring that even if I'm sat in this room, there's 360-degree cameras that can see everything I'm doing. So it's as good as being in a room with somebody else when we're looking at a dispute. But evidence presentation electronically, document management electronically, all of these have had an impact both in kind of sports disputes and in general disputes, and it's going to continue. I don't think we're ever going to go back to the old ways of everybody needs to be in one room in person. So the legal tech and the ability to be able to, through different time zones, access a single hearing in a fair way cannot be underestimated. It's happening. It's going to happen more and more. I think there's just going to be a heightening of that. It's not going to decrease. We're not going to go back to the old ways. We have all online case management. There's nothing that can't be done online anymore. We don't have to forward documents. We can access in real time. Everybody can see what everybody's looking at, sharing screens. I think the days of even, I have a tech problem and I can't access or my internet has fallen down. They're gone as well. Everybody's getting used to doing things online, including sports disputes, and I think it's just going to continue.
Let me double on this question and ask, what about the human interaction, right? Because this is a question that's always arises whenever you mention legal tech and AI. What about the human interaction? What about you're doing arbitration? People needs to be there. What can you say about this?
Yeah, I agree. I think for the smaller matters, so obviously in arbitration we have procedural hearings, you have something that might just be a couple of hours, a pre-trial matter. There's no reason for everybody to be in the same room for those. For the bigger hearings, and this is again two schools of thought. For the bigger hearings where there needs to be evidence that's tested, I still think the human interaction is important. The body language, the tone, the intonation of a witness who's being questioned by me in person, as opposed to through the medium of a Zoom or of an online platform. I don't think you can have the same results. You don't have the same energy, the same atmosphere. There's many people who'll disagree with me and say it's absolutely doable. But I don't think we can get stuck up on the idea of, we must have that human interaction. Yeah. Because everywhere we're going with tech, and generally, I think that's just going to be less and less. And that's just a reality of the world, generally. And it's not just because we don't want to be in the same room. There's various other considerations. And I think as generations are coming up, they are more attuned to, why are we wasting energy in having to travel to be in the same room, and emissions and, carbon, etc. So, there's various considerations. So I agree with you that the human interaction you can't kind of put a price on. But whether it's going to be that important, already it's not as important as it was 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just see a lessening of it as we go further on.
Sarah, what is interesting in legal tech is the way we are managing contracts right now. From our experience, we know that contracts can be handled in a way to minimize the time required to analyze these contracts, to draft these contracts, and to automate them. The question is, how do you think this particular development is helping in the negotiation, drafting, and the management of sports law contracts?
Good question. The AI-powered negotiation tools can help parties to analyze a contract term. What's always important in any contract negotiation is the toing and froing between the parties of different negotiation strategies, what's a deal breaker or maker, and there's a lot of kind of toing and froing and redlining on contracts before you get the final version. Now, the great thing about automated negotiations support that AI can offer that humans cannot without going through a whole process is you can evaluate alternatives, you can look at different negotiation strategies, you have tools that can simplify the process, give you options, give you a framework to work from, and then the lawyers can take over, or the managers, and look at that finalized version, the finalized tech version, and work from that, rather than have to do that from scratch. So I think that the contract negotiation optimization with AI is huge and has the potential to be a real game changer, because it allows a whole host of, some would argue, unnecessary toing and froing, cost, time, to basically be taken out of the scenario, and you can just throw in and ask for a template to be given that automatically can pick from so many different ones. It's just got to make everybody's life easier. Maybe not lawyers, it might, detract from our fee scope, but hey, it makes productivity and the end user much more happy.
What about the acceptance of these particular tools in contracts negotiation? Do you think that it's valid to say that with time, lawyers will be able to accept more and more these tools?
I think it comes down to an awareness as well as an acceptance. I think the space is such that so many people don't actually know how these tools can help them. So, for example, what Lexzur does, and it's great on the market, the visibility and for people to understand, have the awareness of, well, how can this actually help me in real life? It's the fear of the unknown. They don't know. They think it's just going to cost additional time. I've got another process to deal with, rather than thinking actually it's going to take away all of the mundane stuff I don't need to do anymore. So I think the acceptance will come with awareness. The awareness is first, the buy-in into the tech. And I think more and more, whether it's talks like this, whether it's talks on platforms, and a lot of AI talks are taking place in various disciplines, quite rightly so, because we need to educate the community, whether it's a legal community, students or otherwise, about the benefits, and also deal with the potential pitfalls. Because let's face it, when anything's new, there's always a fear of the unknown. Is this going to go wrong? It doesn't work. This is, it's nonsense. It's going to take my work away from me. All of those factors have to be discussed. They have to be out there, because once there are legitimate answers to those, you buy in the credibility. But if I'm fearing a tech, unless you can put my mind to rest, I'm not going to use it. Once I get over that fear and I'm aware about it, then I accept it. So I think that's the process we need to look at. And we're still in the knowledge awareness phase. Those who have accepted it and are using it are already ahead of the game. I think there's work to be done in putting the message out there of what it does and how, it's not going to end the world, if you like, or end the way you work day to day.